Hey, this is Sreehari from Mr. Phone, and today I bring you a review of yet another modern smartphone. It has a gradient at the back, a glossy back, which is a smudge magnet. There is a multi-camera setup, and of course, a notch at the front. But what's so special about this one? Well, this is the Micromax Infinity N12. Once a household name in India, the Micromax brand was nowhere to be seen during the smartphone boom in India. Now, this is their latest Micromax Infinity N12, but is it worthy enough to bring the Micromax brand back to the game? Well, that's what we are here to find out. Hey, this is Sreehari from Mr. Phone, and this is my full review of the Micromax Infinity N12. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. I don't know why you haven't done that yet. And also hit the bell icon right next to it, because doing that will get you notifications for all our latest videos. Mr. Phone is expanding as of now, and on the YouTube channel, you will not only find our reviews and our comparisons, but we also have started with Hindi news every week, twice every week, and Tamil news. And there is an app weekly going on Friday and much more. So please don't forget to check out the channel for all the different videos that we put up. So as we are at the beginning of the year 2019, Mr. Phone decided to do a little survey. So as you know, smartphone software is one of the most vital parts of a good smartphone experience. So Mr. Phone is in works to put out a detailed report on smartphone software, and here is a survey in the description below. Go ahead, fill that survey. I know as knowledgeable smartphone users, you can help us out, get information of what the smartphone software today is like and how we can maybe help make it better. Coming to design, the Micromax Infinity N12 is without a doubt the most good-looking Micromax phone ever. The gradients seems to be in fashion, and the thing about gradients is that if you get it right, it looks classy and trendy. But if you get it even slightly wrong, it ruins the whole phone and it just looks kinda cheap. Fortunately, the Micromax N12 has gotten it right. The phone does look way out of its own league. That said, the back is still plastic and there are already a lot of scratches that can only be hidden by smudges. So yeah, get a case for it because you don't get one in the box. The top of the phone is where the long SIM/micro SD card slots sit. It's a triple slot design, so that's great. Now, while the volume button still feels tactile, the power button has started to become slightly mushy in my unit. It charges via a micro USB cable, but the more interesting part sits at the other end of that cable. I am really intrigued by the shape of it, and another thing is that it lights up. That's an unusually cool thing on a charger to have, and I have to say that it does stand out when plugged into a wall. Now, I do consume a lot of content on my phone, and while the headphone jack output was quite standard, the single speaker left a lot to be desired. It seems quite normal though. At any price, it's quite difficult to get the headphone jack output less than average, but the better speaker output required much more R&D and more expensive DACs or amps, which clearly the phone lacks. Now, since last year, I've been constantly saying how much I've been impressed by the smartphone displays in budget phones. And this one surely keeps that up. This is my first Micromax phone review on Mr. Phone, and contrary to what I expected, the display is pretty good. It's 720p plus, but I don't really care too much for resolution. I'm glad to find that the display quality is quite good. The colors look pretty good and the sharpness also looks to be on point. The brightness also was quite satisfying, although the viewing angles weren't exactly the best. There was a slight color shift that I found, especially when you turn on black or white screens, but that's about it. The display is of very good quality. There is some light bleed at the bottom. The temperature is also a bit on the cooler side. Now, when it comes to actually watching videos or movies on this, I enjoyed the experience. It doesn't come with wideband L1 though, you only get wideband L3, but I don't feel that's a deal breaker really. All this said, the display still manages to stay on the yay side of the list, and unless you nitpick as much as I do, I think you should enjoy this display. Now, guessing a smartphone's price by just looking at it or even looking at the display is kinda easy, but what's more easier is to simply look at the processor. The Helio P22 inside the Micromax Infinity N12 is clocked at 2 GHz and comes with 3 GB of RAM. Now, my real world experience with this phone hasn't really been great. I'm surprised to see that even with near stock Android inside it, the phone struggled to keep frame rate stable for a long time. I tried speeding up the animation in developer options, but that did very little in enhancing my experience. The N12 uses eMMC 5.1 storage inside with read speeds of 289.85 MB per second and write speeds of 118.96 MB per second. Now these aren't mind-blowing numbers, but yes, compared to the Samsung M10 which I reviewed a week ago, this one has better speeds, which means that on paper this should be slightly faster when it comes to upload times. Now also for the sake of it, I played PUBG on this and it went better than I expected. That's all I have to say. It wasn't a lot of fun, also because the speaker quality wasn't really appealing, but it's not really meant for a lot of gameplay. That said, if you want to, it surely gets the job done. The Antutu score for the Micromax Infinity N12 was 78,000 and the Geekbench scores came out to be 836 for single core performance and 3494 for multi-core. These scores certainly stand well against the competition, but unfortunately the same can't be said about the real world performance. But the fact that the internals aren't really that bad gives me some hope that probably after some level of software optimization, Micromax is able to get a better software experience and a better performance out of the Micromax Infinity N12. Now the thing that I did like about the Micromax Infinity N12 was near stock OS experience. Tweaks by Micromax is limited to app icons and a few lock screen elements, but the rest of it is Android Oreo in its naked form. I like how well organized and how bare bones it is. So while the Micromax Infinity N12 comes with near stock Android, Micromax has applied a launcher on top of the experience to slightly try and enhance it. Now the first sighting of that launcher happens when you long press on the home screen. Now this is strictly for the home screen and cannot be brought up in any other screen, but you do get quick toggles to flight mode, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, hotspot, location, etc. You get a widget for the music player also, and you get a few tools. Now wallpaper, widget and settings, again like the stock launcher, you get that here, but you also get something called customization. Now some of these options in the customization is a direct link to the settings. So for example, if you tap notification dots, it takes you to the notification settings in the settings panel and lets you turn on or off notification dots. There is also a theme store which actually has a lot of different themes. You can also search across different categories, and you also have wallpapers on this phone. So that's amazing. You have got a theme store to make and customize your phone as and when you want. There are a lot of customizations inside this, but that is all there is to the launcher. Wait, there's one more thing. When you swipe to the left, instead of a Google feed, you get something called a round, and I can't seem to wrap my head around it. Basically, it's a random collection of news articles that, as I can see, there is also a lot of videos available. Basically, looks like a UC browser homepage, of course, badly optimized. Now, if my shift from a tech-savvy smartphone user to a reviewer taught me one thing, then it's that everyone is different. You know what? Sitting at home behind a computer screen watching videos online, I used to wonder why every manufacturer isn't already ditching their OSS for stock Android. But that said, becoming a reviewer has taught me that everyone is different, and a lot of people actually feel that stock Android is very boring and empty. Not for me though, I'm a fan, and the surety of maximum performance that stock Android gives me is enough to get me sleep at night. The only valuable feedback I would present is that the software needs to feel slightly more refined. There were a lot of places where the notch wasn't optimized well. The camera app also needs a lot of work, which we'll talk about in the next section, but the software on the whole doesn't feel as refined as it should have been. And for me, I think though this hardware is not difficult to nail, a good software experience is quite difficult to nail, and I do hope that Micromax takes this feedback and works on the software so that it becomes easy for people like us to recommend these phones, and also for the user to get a reliable software experience. The Micromax N12 has a 13 megapixel camera at the back with a 5 megapixel secondary camera, and although it looks like a 3 camera setup like on the P20 Pro, it's not. It's an LED flash at the bottom. Also on the front, you get a 16 megapixel camera. Now first talking about the back camera, I took a few pictures with it and here's what it looks like. The back camera is quite standard when it comes to shots. The pictures have above average details and good clarity. The colors do seem slightly washed out, and I also had trouble focusing a few times. That said, I was able to get fine looking pictures out of this that aren't really bad for the price. What I was more intrigued by is the front camera. Now, I did not go in expecting a lot, but the front camera does have a lot of potential. Now, why am I saying that it has a lot of potential instead of saying that it's a great camera? Now, I took a few pictures using this, and the pictures looked very good, barring a few things. The colors look quite appealing and slightly saturated, which I am a fan of, and a lot of people also tend to like. The exposure was also not too bad. The dynamic range was also not too bad. That said, details is what I had a problem with. The natural details on the sensor looked quite fine, but the over sharpening was just over the top. Now, when I was in a low lit situation, the over sharpening was not that overbearing. That said, when I took the pictures in good broad daylight, it just looked like there were a lot of things going on my face, and it seemed like the over sharpening was to the point that the camera was creating a few details on my face. Now, it's certainly not a camera that can beat phones like the Redmi Note 6 Pro or even the Realme U1, but the camera does have some potential, and unlike the pictures from the back camera, which I was not really a fan of, I do think that the front camera will be able to take some really good pictures if well optimized. Now, from the pictures, let's come to the camera app itself. The camera app is one of the things that's very important in a smartphone experience, and when you get phones like this which has near stock Android, the camera app is a very important part of the experience. Now, the camera app on the Micromax Infinity N12 does pack a lot of features. The different modes have been arranged well. You get the settings panel where you can choose between different aspect ratios very easily. You can turn on and off grids. You also have tap to focus, and you can go into more settings to change different things, like you can add geo tagging. You can also choose to have maximum brightness when you open the camera app. This is something that can be helpful to a lot of people. When you're generally using the phone, you keep the brightness low, but when you're taking a picture, you want to know that the camera's brightness is max so that you can get to see everything in the viewfinder. It also has something called Save Face Info, where what it does is that once you start taking pictures using the phone, it'll start and save details of different faces and the beauty modes that it applied, so that whenever you take a picture, it applies the same kind of beauty mode, which means that your pictures look very uniform. That said, the camera app does need a lot of work. The camera experience wasn't really exciting. It did lag in a lot of places. I had difficulty switching between different modes, and the bokeh mode, or the portrait mode as it's popularly known, was really lagging. The frame rate was very unappealing, and I did not have a lot of fun taking pictures using this phone. Apart from that, you do get slow-mo, time-lapse. You also get a pro mode where you can go and tinker with the settings and get the right picture. Now, the Micromax Infinity N12 has a 4000 mAh battery inside, which is quite a size for this device. The smaller size of the display added with a lower resolution does promote a longer battery life. And I can't help but say that the Micromax Infinity N12 does justice to its name, because it lasts for infinity, practically, of course. The 4000 mAh battery in the N12 outputs some of the longest hours I've gotten from a smartphone, but the one Achilles heel that the battery of this phone has is the charging time. Unlike a lot of phones in this price range that come with a basic 5-watt charger, the Infinity N12 comes with a 7.5-watt charger, which is slightly higher in wattage. But sadly, the phone took 3 hours and 20 minutes to go from 0 to 100. Now, this is quite a duration to get your phone charged from 0 to 100. Of course, you should not be charging your phone from 0 to 100 every time, but that's a story for another video. But this is a long duration to charge your phone. Now, for the people who haven't really used fast chargers, this wouldn't be a problem and would seem quite standard. But for the people who have, I don't think you'll be able to handle the charging time on this. That said, the fact that the battery life is this long is quite redeeming. Now, concluding this review, the Micromax Infinity N12 is a great product, only if it was coming from a new brand. The gradient at the back, the multi-camera setup, and the notch all give out a very promising vibe. That said, the smartphone experience on the Infinity N12 doesn't feel refined enough for me to recommend easily. More than anything else, it feels like an exceptionally good attempt, but lacks maturity that a lot of other brands in the market boast of. The Micromax brand, though, does seem to possess an unfair advantage over others when it comes to brand recognition in India. And I can easily see myself recommending Micromax phones over Xiaomi's and Realme's. That is, if they don't slack off. With that, we come to an end of the review of the Micromax Infinity N12. Please give me any feedback that you have in the comment section below. I'll jump down there and answer your questions. But that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sreehari from Mr. Phone, and I'll catch you in the next one.